Welcome back, everyone, to today's explainer. I want you to just take a second and observe the monuments of the modern world. If you look closely, you'll realize they're practically made of sand. Today, we're diving into something called the ephemeral trap, and we're going to figure out exactly how to shift our mindset to build something that actually lasts.
Seriously, have you ever wondered why most achievements are completely forgotten within a decade? Why the sheer noise of the present just seems to swallow the voices of the past? You put in all this insane effort, you chase engagement, and yet it just vanishes, doesn't it?
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the ephemeral trap, or what's known as the clinical reality of the archive.
See, in the clinical reality of the archive, which is essentially this lens of deep time, we definitely don't call our current behavior progress. We call it the ephemeral trap. The primary failure of the unrefined mind is this absolute pathological obsession with the temporary. You probably believe that relevance is a sign of power, right? Or that engagement is a measure of impact? Well, you're wrong. Actually, you are currently suffering from a chronic state of historical debt, building a whole life on a platform of shifting pixels and fleeting trends. Think about this stark metaphor for a second. You are building a tent in a hurricane and calling it a home. You're basically a biological host, spending your absolute best metabolic gold on a fire that produces absolutely no heat, only light. And that light, it vanishes the exact moment you stop feeding it.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Vanity Loop, performing instead of building.
So here are the mechanics of this vanity loop. Most humans aren't really building, they're merely performing. Every success that relies on the validation of the current crowd is basically a structure with zero foundation. The system behind this, called the Leviathan, actually thrives on this ephemerality. It desperately needs you to build things that decay quickly so that you literally never stop working. It pushes you to seek mass applause because, well, applause is a currency that devalues in real time. You're basically a biological machine running at top speed to stay relevant in a simulation designed to discard you the second your signal weakens. Can you feel the erosion from all that? It's the friction of the meaningless life. We can even quantify this systemic failure through what's called the coefficient of temporal decay. The brutal rule here is that the more your work relies on the now, the faster it will absolutely be liquidated by the tomorrow. You're trying to leave a mark on water. The system doesn't even need to destroy your work. Its whole goal is just to make your work irrelevant before you're even dead.
All right, let's pivot. Section 3, generational gravity, mastering the geometry of the anchor.
So, how do we escape this trap? While the archive demands a total liquidation of this frantic shallowness, before you can be remembered, you have to learn how to build something the world literally cannot help but carry. Look at the contrast here. On one side, we have the temporary performer, shouting in the town square, building just for the current crowd. But on the other side, the monumental architect. They build for the absolute silence of deep time. They don't shout in the town square, they are the town square. They operate with generational dominance, creating the very axioms that others are forced to follow centuries later. To become that monumental architect, you really have to internalize this completely brilliant reframing of legacy. A legacy is not something you leave behind, it is something you build into the vacuum. When you finally stop chasing the attention of the present moment, you start building structures of thought that have their own gravity, pulling the minds of future generations right into your orbit. But watch out, because the Leviathan will absolutely try to distract you with newness. It wants to keep you completely stuck in those shallow waters. You have to remember, real power is the man who builds a cathedral he will never see finished. Real historical weight comes from having a long-term, completely unshakable vision. So, the crucial point is, how do we actually do this? Section 4, the Monumental Architecture Protocol, 3 steps to sovereignty. To claim absolute sovereignty over your work and stop being a temporary performer, you need this protocol. It's 3 specific steps. Step 1, the liquidation of vanity. Step 2, the art of the obsidian decree. And step 3, nurturing the gravity constant.
Okay, step 1 is a ruthless audit of your life. You need to ask yourself this ultimate auditing question. If I died tonight, would this matter in 50 years? Look at whatever project you're working on right now. If the answer is no, it's basically a withdrawal from your legacy. You've got to strike it down immediately. Liquidate the vanity.
Moving on to step 2, the art of the obsidian decree. Remember, real legacy requires the gravity of the obsidian stone. To lay that stone, you have to cut out all the topical noise. You have to learn to speak and build in truths that are strictly bound by the permanent laws of human nature and thermodynamics, totally ignoring whatever the current social climate is doing.
And then we have step 3, which is fascinating because it's basically mathematical authority, the calculus of legacy. To nurture your gravity constant, or G sub L, you're looking at the limit as time approaches infinity of your signal density divided by entropy. Your signal density is that pure crystalline core of your intent. The entropy, that's just the natural decay and noise of right now. To maximize your gravity mathematically, you absolutely must eliminate that superficial entropy to leave behind a dense, enduring signal.
Now, I know, and the text definitely knows, that the urge to be seen right now is incredibly strong. And yeah, the silence of playing the long game can feel like a terrifying void. But as this quote so beautifully points out, the void is where the stars are born. That silence, it's literally the only place where true significance is forged.
I really want you to feel the immense weight of the stone you're laying today. Seriously, ask yourself, are you just the flash of a firework that everyone sees but absolutely no one remembers? Or are you the quiet mountain that everyone takes for granted right up until they try to move it? The world is always going to forget the noise, always, but it will never forget the geometry of the soul that chose to remain.
You have the power to be the master of the anchor. So as we close out today's explainer, I want to leave you with this incredible sign-off from the clinical reality of the archive. Stay heavy, stay sharp. Make sure your signal is still ringing long after you're gone. The future absolutely belongs to those who build for it today. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Now go out there and build your monument in the silence.
All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to examine a pretty harsh reality. And that's why most of our modern achievements are, well, they're basically just built on sand. But more importantly, we're going to look at how you can fundamentally shift your mindset to stop building for the weekend and start building a permanent legacy. Today, we're stepping into the clinical reality of the archive, pulling directly from our source material to decode the actual architecture of true permanence.
I mean, seriously, look around for a second. Have you ever wondered why most achievements are just totally forgotten within a decade? Why does the screaming, frantic noise of the present always seem to swallow up the voices of the past? We like to call this progress, but it isn't. It's a trap. We are moving faster than ever, generating more content, more noise, more so-called wins than literally any generation before us, and yet, almost none of it sticks. So why are we so easily erased? Well, this exact sickness actually has a name. It's called the ephemeral trap. It's basically the primary failure of the unrefined mind, this pathological obsession with the temporary. You see, society has totally convinced us that relevance is a sign of power, and that engagement is somehow a measure of actual impact. They are absolutely not. If you're out there chasing relevance, you're living in a chronic state of historical debt. You're building your entire life on shifting pixels and fleeting trends. You're basically acting as a biological host, spending your precious metabolic gold on a fire that produces absolutely zero heat, just a blinding light that vanishes the exact second you stop feeding it.
And that brings us to the mechanics of the vanity loop. The really harsh reality here is that most humans aren't building, they're performing. Every success that relies on the validation of the current crowd, that is a structure with absolutely no foundation. You're just feeding the Leviathan. The system needs you to build things that decay quickly so you never ever stop working. It literally demands rapid decay. It pushes you to value applause, but think about it. Applause is a currency that devalues in real time. You end up becoming this high-speed biological machine running at breakneck pace, desperate to stay relevant in a simulation that is designed to discard you the very moment your signal weakens.
Okay, let's actually slow down for a second and really look at this contrast. On one side, we've got the temporary performer. The system has you building a tent in a hurricane and you're calling it a home. Can you feel the erosion of that? That's the friction of a meaningless life. You're trying to leave a mark on water. But on the flip side, we have the monumental architect. The architect knows that the system doesn't even need to destroy your work if it can just make it irrelevant before you're even dead. The architect seeks the silence of deep time. They build with the gravity of obsidian stone.
So the absolutely crucial point is this transition. Moving from the temporary performer to the monumental architect begins with the law of generational gravity. You have to realize that a legacy isn't just something you haphazardly leave behind. It is something you actively build into the vacuum. This right here is the reclamation of the temporal anchor. We don't build for the crowd. We build for the silence of deep time. We architect structures of thought and action that possess their own immense gravity, structures that literally pull the minds of future generations into our own orbit.
And that perfectly illustrates the ultimate goal, because once you finally stop seeking the frantic attention of the present, You gain the actual ability to influence the future. This is the state of generational dominance. Let this sink in. You are no longer shouting in the town square. You are the square itself. Feel the weight of that. You aren't just some fleeting event anymore. You are the permanent infrastructure where all future events have to take place.
But, you've got to be warned. The Leviathan, that whole system of endless, decaying consumption we talked about, it's constantly going to attempt to distract you with newness. It'll tell you that the future is totally unpredictable, that you need to pivot, and that you should focus entirely on the immediate win. And why? Because it wants you to stay in the shallow water. It wants you where the waves can break your spirit and keep you perpetually treading water, just completely exhausting your energy on the temporary.
Because real power? Real power is the man who builds a cathedral he will never see finished. By age 45, the architect who has truly mastered the law of generational gravity has become a source of historical weight. They don't follow trends. They create the axioms that others are literally forced to follow centuries later. The true architect doesn't own the moment. They own the timeline.
So, to actually claim this sovereignty for yourself, you have to implement the protocol of monumental architecture. It requires 3 definitive, almost mathematical steps: the liquidation of the vanity, the art of the obsidian decree, and nurturing the gravity constant. Let's break these down so we can understand exactly how you go about forging this anchor.
All right, step 1 is the liquidation of the vanity. I want you to apply this to your life today. Audit every single project you're currently working on and ask yourself this: if I died tonight, would this matter in 50 years? If the answer is no, it's a withdrawal from your legacy. Treat it like a parasite on your timeline. Strike it down. Liquidate that frantic shallowness right now.
Step 2 brings us to the art of the obsidian decree. Basically, this means you have to learn to speak and operate in absolute truths that are completely unbound by whatever the current social climate is. Stop adjusting your work to get applause from today's audience. Build your work on the permanent, unbreakable laws of human nature and thermodynamics. If your work relies on a trend, it's fragile, but if it relies on fundamental truth, well, then it's obsidian.
And step 3 introduces a pretty profound piece of calculus: nurturing the gravity constant. Think of it like this formula right here. Your legacy is mathematically defined by the limit, as time approaches infinity, of your signal density divided by entropy. In this clinical reality we're talking about, your legacy comes down to how dense, pure, and concentrated your signal remains as the endless decay of time just pushes forward. It's all about how well your work resists entropy. So, to maximize that gravity constant, you have to follow this exact directive. Remove everything that is purely topical and leave only the crystalline core of your intent. All that topical noise, the references to today's news cycle, the fleeting vernacular, that is entropy. It dilutes your signal density. You've got to strip all of that away until only the unbreakable crystalline core is left standing.
Look, my friend, I know the urge to be seen right now is incredibly strong. We are biologically wired to want immediate validation from our peers. And when you strip all of that away, the silence of the long game, it can feel vast. Actually, it can feel terrifyingly empty, like you're stepping into a void. But I'm here to tell you that the void is exactly where the stars are born. You have to embrace that silence if you ever want to build anything of true mass.
Please, do not be the flash of a firework. A firework is spectacular for what? Exactly 3 seconds? Everyone points, everyone sees it, but the very next morning, nobody remembers its shape. All that's left is just burnt paper on the ground. Instead, be the quiet mountain. The mountain isn't screaming for attention. People take it for granted, right up until they try to move it, and suddenly they realize the immense, unyielding power of its permanence.
I want you to feel the physical weight of the stone you are laying today. The world is going to forget the noise of the crowd. It always does. But it will never, ever forget the precise geometry of the soul that chose to remain. You are the master of the anchor. You are the king of the Pyramidion. Here, in the silence of the archive, we are witnessing the rise of your monument. Your foundation is set. Do not let the fleeting panic of the present pull you off your axis. Stay heavy. Stay sharp. Know that when you're gone, because you chose the long game, your signal will still be ringing clear across the centuries. Your home. As we wrap up this explainer, just remember what we've uncovered. We do not build for the applause of the fleeting crowd. We build for deep time. The archive is reading. Sleep well, architect.
The future belongs to those who build for it today. So what permanent monument are you going to start building tomorrow?